Alrighty then, hi guys, and welcome to another battle report type video. And probably in this one, some first thoughts on Shenlong1 as well. Of course, these are not the first thoughts ever on Shenlong1. He's been out a very, very long time, much longer than I've been playing the game. However, as some of you who saw the Lin guide that I did recently, one of the reasons I did that was as part of a knowledge sharing thing to get some ideas and tips and tricks for Shenlong, because it was a master that I felt like if you want to play Thunders well across GG4, you want to have him in your potential pool of masters, and so I have begun my many games that it takes me to feel comfortable enough with a master to drop it at a large tournament. So with that in mind, this was my first tournament playing Shenlong, and in fact I only started even training with him just after that Lin guide was made, so I don't know if that was 1 or 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I think, I haven't really been counting accurately, but I think I got about 8 or 9 games in with Shen before the tournament, and then obviously 3 games on the day. So we're only 12 games in, so any and all comments that I make on Shen should be taken with that in mind. And so now a little bit more about the tournament. So it was in Krakow in Poland, and I live in Brno in Czech Republic, and so it's about a 5-hour trip there by coach. You can do it faster by car, but I don't have one, so there you go. And the train connections are for some reason really shit. So coach it is. And it was a one-day tournament, a 16-player event, so a more local one than a big nationals or anything. However, there was myself there. There were 2 players that had come in down on the train from Wrocław. There was another guy that I think had even flown from somewhere else in Poland. If I don't want to sort of give misinformation, but I believe so. So in other words, a quarter of the players had come from afar, if you like. So that's not really not bad for a local tournament, and I really like to see that. I think playing in neighbouring communities really adds a lot to the game, to those communities, and from my side, really freshens things up and gives you an excuse to go and meet new people and get a little look into their lives a tiny bit as well. I realise that's all a bit non-Malifaux, but it's one of the things that I use Malifaux to do. So for me, it seemed important to mention. This one was, according to Longshanks, the organizer was Irenka, but I think he was just the one who did the Longshanks stuff on behalf of Zabek, who was the organizer and did most of the sort of announcements on the day and that sort of thing. So I'm pretty sure he was the official TO for this one. And it was held in, oh Lord, I'm going to forget the name, Shop. It reminds me of Graz, like the city in Vienna, but it's not that, but it's something close to that. Bugger. Anyway, so a nice little venue, really nice, well stocked. They had a nice looking shop part at the front, good refreshments on offer, nice little gaming spaces. The layout was obviously a function of the space that they had. You wouldn't choose that. In other words, lots of little side rooms off to different areas. And obviously, if you were running a bigger tournament, you'd probably want all of those rooms. Apparently, normally they would have more of the rooms available, but there was another tournament, a little bit of miscommunication. Another card game tournament was going on in the same venue. So we were all kind of like in one smaller area of the shop and just trying to make it work with the space that we had. And we did. But you could tell that with the whole place available to you, and if we were sort of spread across the rooms with a bit more space per table, it would have been a really ideal venue and a nice place to play. So I'm pleased for the Krakow community that they've got that available to them. That was cool. What else is worth sort of talking about before we get into the games themselves and the thoughts? Not so much really. I suppose for context then, I had to wake up at 3:30 in the morning to get there for 8:39-ish, and then one of the guys that was driving down from just outside of town was kind enough to pick me up and also grab the guys from the train station from Wrocław and then take us all down to the venue. So we got started a tiny bit late because the train was delayed, I think, but nothing crazy, you know, normal tournament stuff. And then we jumped into pretty much straight into round one. So let's get on with it. Round one was against Filip Kalinowski, I think. And I don't think we've played before. I mean, again, take all of this with a grain of salt. My memory for people and faces are not amazing, but I don't think we've played before. And he declared Guild. Normally, if I'm playing against Guild, I would be very tempted to declare McCabe. But as I said, the purpose of this tournament for me was to get 3 Shen games in and sort of put my practice on the table, see how it felt in a tournament environment, and get a better feel for scheme strength and that sort of thing within Shenlong, and also to sort of start real-time training the crew selection part of Shenlong, which I think is a really, really big element of the crew. So we go into Guild, and then we declare Shen, and then we see Hoffman. So Hoffman, it's been a long time since I played against Hoffman. We had a local who played Hoff 2 back when he was busted, and so I played several games into Hoff 2, and I was pretty used to getting the standard combination of Melissa blasting the piss out of you and then Peacekeeper stabbing the piss out of you. And sort of dealing with Armor 2 stuff, and then dealing with the various ways that Hoff 2 could build his crew. So do you want to just go for a full kill, bubble, stand in the middle and murder and have a lot of armor? Or do you want to go with sort of pylon here, pylon there, pylon in the middle, and have some watchers or hunters sort of spreading out a little bit and that sort of thing? So I think Hoff's got some interesting choices to be made as well. And so I was trying to take all that into consideration, but also just didn't have a lot of crew building repetitions with Shen to sort of accurately feel like I could counter what he might or might not do. So, and of course, I'm speaking about Hoff 2, but Hoff 1 is always a possibility. And against Shenlong 1, where you know that some irreducible damage is available, Hoff 1 makes a lot of sense because you can make sure that the armor can't be ignored. And indeed, that's what he chose. So he chose Hoff 1. I've played against Hoff 1 as well. We had an Arcanist Hoff 1 player and a Guild Hoff 2 player in our local a long time ago. But, well, I say a long time ago in terms of the number of games I've played since then. So I've seen Hoff 1 as well, and was aware of his sort of, okay, so he's planning to sort of, ignore my ignoring his armor and then probably take a more fighty approach. However, the pool was as follows. Round 1 was Stuff the Ballots, Flank, with Let Them Bleed, Protected Territory, Deliver a Message, Hold Up Their Forces, and Sweating Bullets. So you've got sort of protected territory, which is taken by a huge number of people on a huge number of pools. It's not the hardest scheme to score. It's quite reliably going to get you 1 point and semi-reliably get you 2. It's arguably a bit too easy. And then you've got Deliver a Message, which is a very different type of scheme. It's one where you're very, very likely to get the first point, presuming you choose wisely, and it's against a master that's likely to be somewhere near the fighting. But the second point is really difficult to get because it means that you're not allowed to kill their master for the rest of the game. So their master gets to sort of run free, knowing that if you kill it, you won't score your second scheme point. And then it sort of just really comes down to activation control on turn 5. So do you have it or not? That's whether you score it or not. It's not difficult to get a scheme marker next to their master. It's difficult to get the last activation to be able to do so. Hold Up Their Force is an interesting one. That's more of a crew building one. So are you going to build for that or not? If you do, then it's a relatively easy one to score. It doesn't cost you a great deal of AP, which is important. When a lot of AP are needed on Stuff the Ballots to vote, or on your second scheme to drop schemes or whatever it is, or to try to deny what your opponent's doing, or if you just know it's going to be a very grindy game and you're going to need that AP, then Hold Up Their Forces sort of takes that pressure off you to be doing to be taking specific actions to try and score it. However, you do need to build your crew in a certain way, and you do need to be aware that when it's in the pool that the opponent might do the same thing, and if you both go for Hold Up Their Forces, things get a bit weird because you've both got a bunch of cheap shit, and that can be interesting, but it's worth being aware of. Then you've got Sweating Bullets, which is one of those kind of easy to score one, tricky to score two kind of scenarios, but if you know that it's going to turn into a good old bloodbath in the middle, then Sweating Bullets likely to get you some value. Let Them Bleed if your approach is to hurt things and you've got ways of dealing ping damage, especially if it's unresisted, then Let Them Bleed, solid options. So lots of interesting schemes there. I really like GG4, I have to say. It's GG3, but a tiny bit less killy, and a bit more sort of opening up the map and leaning away from bubble crews without shutting them out. I think they've done a really good job. So I decided to build my crew for the Hold Up Their Forces option, and then take Protected Territory, because I think it's very, very often the right choice. Especially with the ability to move scheme markers around or drop them easily, which Shen has with his Four Winds Punch. So we go into flank deploy, and I decided to take 3 Fermented River Monks. So the idea being that they're 6 cost, difficult to kill, 2-inch reach models, which means they can engage enemy models easily, hopefully not die before they get there in order to score Hold Up Their Forces. And meanwhile, they are good at sitting near ballots and voting while having a 2-inch reach to make it difficult for other people to counter vote. And again, they're difficult to put down quickly. They die, but usually it takes a lot of AP and effort and cards to do so, and then the rest of your crew gets to do what it wants to do in the meantime. That plan seemed reasonable, and I do like Fermented River Monks in Shenlong specifically, because things like Sensei Yu being able to give them additional chi when they take damage, that's important. They really suffer for chi. They really need it, and they can't actually spend their time concentrating because they need to spend their time drinking with each other in the first turns to build up their poison for their defense and their potential damage output. So they have a trigger on rams where they can add they can basically drop 2 poison to add 2 damage to the attack. That's a really big one. It makes them min 4, and they're 6 stone models. So min 4 6 stone models, not fucking around. You do need chi to get the attack through sometimes, because it's on stat 5, and you do need to get into base to base. There's a 0-inch melee on that attack. They have 2 attacks. One is 2-inch, one is 0. So the 2-inch attack is the one that gives them that sort of staying power and that ability to really annoy 1-inch reach models, so they can just engage them and force them to disengage or walk and sort of waste AP. They're very, very, very AP efficient, and they help at making the opponent AP inefficient. So I really like them, especially on Stuff the Ballots where AP matters a lot more than elsewhere. In addition to that, I can't remember my exact crew for that game, so I had usually a mix of 1 low river monk, 1 or 2 terracottas, 2 or 3 fermented river monks, and if I suspect shooting, I'll have the Four Winds Golem. I think the Four Winds Golem in Arcanists with a Soulstone Cache is a really, 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 really strong model, but costs 12. A 10 cost Soulstone Golem, Four Winds Golem in Thunders, where you don't have access to, well, any good upgrades, but the Soulstone Cache specifically. It's a really high work model, so you can give it fast because you can transfer fast. You can give fast to a monk with Sensei Yu, then transfer that fast from the monk to the Four Winds Golem using Shenlong's spiritual alignment, I think it is. So you can do that. You can load up its chi by just concentrating with your other monks. So then you end up you can give it focus with either the low river monk or again transferring it with Shen. So if you want to spend master AP or if you want to spend cards, and if you want to really sort of build yourself around buffing up that Four Winds Golem, you can turn it into an absolute offensive monster. But defensively, it is 5/5, 9 boxes, and butterfly jump, and that's it. So if they can get around the butterfly jump, which more and more things kind of can, or if they can just crack you for 7, I'm thinking Angel Eyes, for example, I realise that that's a pistol action, so it'd be -2. But still, let's imagine, okay, so you go in with this crit strike severe, and he goes, haha, I've got -2 on shooting. Okay, well, you've just taken 5 boxes, you butterfly jump, bravo, and now you've got 4 boxes left. And if I can do 4 to you, you're just dead. And if not, then you're sort of forced to then go with your healers, move them into position, heal up the Four Winds Golem. You spend your whole sort of game buffing up and trying to keep your Four Winds Golem alive and relevant. And sometimes they just kill it. They just get there. So I'm not sure about the Four Winds Golem yet. As I said, limited number of games. Offensively, and to be able to scalpel out backline pieces that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get to, and to reliably deal with hard to kill, for example. So it's an amazing effigy killer, because you come in with your Wind Blast, you deal some damage, and then you've got the inbuilt collision trigger to deal that 1 extra at the end. So that's really nice. I could also see, like, if you were in a Thunder's Mirror and you wanted to deal with terracottas, then having that collision trigger to be able to just sort of damage one thing and also ping one off the terracotta sort of incidentally. They're very likely to be near each other because that's what terracottas tend to want to do. So you'd force the terracottas to then go off on their own, where they're a bit slow and not super threatening until the late game. So I think the Four Winds Golem has a lot of places in which it could be really good, but I don't consider it an auto-include, which I would in, for example, a Sandeep Arcanist's list. So in this game, I didn't feel like he was going to be coming at me with a shitload of shooting. It was just going to be Melissa, and my intention was to just sort of soak that, heal it, and not worry about it too much, and not sort of take this Four Winds Golem as a direct counter. Should I have taken the Four Winds Golem? Don't know. It's really to take a 10 stone model when you're trying to go for hold up their forces and when you need a lot of AP to be doing voting and vote controlling. I don't think this sort of backline scalpeling piece is necessarily the choice. So I didn't go with it. I went with lots and lots of little monks, Sensei Yu, and some terracottas and Desper. So I did tech in Desper. Desper to threaten armor piercing, but I think a lot of what Desper brings is more his Don't Mind Me and Leap, and Stone Theft and Stun, rather than the actual armor piercing. But the threat of armor piercing often really makes people very nervous, and then occasionally you just go, oh wait, I can actually just crack a severe for ignoring armor here, pop double crit on it, and then I can threaten to kill this Melissa, or this I could just snap this Watcher's neck, and then collapse that side of the map. So I was pleased with the Desper pick. It worked out well. Don't Mind Me prevents people doing the same thing that I'm trying to do to them. So I'm trying to stick annoying, difficult to maneuver or remove 2-inch reach models near the voting markers, and then Don't Mind Me just says, yeah, I don't care. So they jump in and vote anyway. So Desper was there. And with Shenlong, you've got the ability on his bonus to tell another model to take its bonus. So you can effectively do sort of 2 leaps during one turn with Desper. So you get Shenlong to do his thing, tell Desper to take a leap. That sets him up positionally. You want to do that sort of mid to late turn. And then Desper goes last and then leaps again and gets to wherever he wants to do and does whatever he needs to do to score you some points. Points win games. So I think Desper is a really nice touch, and I had a lot of discussion with Azdex and Legislat about Shenlong before, sort of as a lead up to the training that I did, and I had a lot of discussion and games with Plag as well about Shenlong and sort of his thoughts on it. So I think, like, for example, ideas about having low stone count, high model count, very AP efficient crews was something that I definitely took to heart and was sort of really trying to put on the table and test out here. And I think it's strong, and I think it's one definitely a potentially good way to play it. So what actually happened? Good Lord, this has been a long introduction. I don't promise it's going to get any faster than this. I'm processing my own thoughts. I'm decompressing the event, and hopefully that'll be of interest to some of you, because that's what you're going to get. I opened up the game with my usual, so Fermented River Monks go early to make sure they can get poison on each other and have a little bit of chi, just to make sure that they are not just sniped off at the start of the game. And that also spreads out your crew a little bit, which makes you a little bit less vulnerable to those early blast models such as Melissa. Other good parts about this is that if you've got any weak crows or tomes, they immediately become 2 extra poison or an extra chi on your Fermented River Monks early game. So you get those out your hand, spend them on just, self-poison trigger or self-concentrate trigger while having a drink with the other Fermented River Monks. So they all have a little drinking session, and you get to dump all your low tomes and crows for a useful purpose. Then you go with Sensei Yu or your terracottas and reload your hand. So a nice little sort of early game opening there. Problem is, I had not respected nearly enough the Hoff 1, give a bunch of power tokens, give fast to Melissa, and then come in and blast the crap out of something. I'd not given that nearly enough respect. It had been too long since I'd played against it, and my deployment was not good enough. I gave him a fairly juicy blast to kill my low river monk and 1 totem, so that was really bad. And it also touched Shen, I think, so he took a bit of damage. I don't really care about that, because Shenlong gets healed up anyway. He's not a great target to try and kill, usually. And when you damage him, Sensei, you can give him a chi. And what I want to do in the early game often is just load Shenlong up with chi so that for the rest of the game he can threaten to be a monster. So him being hit, not a big problem. Losing a totem early, oh god, that hurts. The Shenlong totems are so goddamn deficient for the whole game. And losing one really, really sucked. And losing the low river monk before he had gained chi, so he couldn't really defend himself very well. Really rookie mistake, which I immediately regretted. Good news is that woke me up. So it's like, we turn up, we're getting stuff ready, first game of the day, sort of, oh god, I've been up since 3:30. I've managed to sleep a bit on the coach, but you never get perfectly good sleep. And then arrived and meet a bunch of new people and a lot going on, and then we get into the game, and then boom, you've just lost your totem and low river turn 1, like 4th activation. You're like, oh shit. So I quite like it though. It sort of gives you the pressure. It's like, oh right, okay, fuck, right, this is a game. Let's not fuck around. Right, right, we are now behind. How are we going to score? Because we're now in a position where scoring becomes more valuable than fighting sometimes. If you're losing the fight and you don't know if you're going to be able to swing that round or whatever, and Hoff 1 being able to sort of make my irreducible not irreducible, I was thinking, right, this is problematic. We need to be looking immediately at how to score. So I took a few minutes. I usually do that if something goes wrong in the game, whether that's a black joker, a red joker, an unexpected kill, a scheme being scored that I hadn't expected, whatever it is, I like to take a couple of minutes and sort of just reassess the game. Do not sort of plow on as if everything's okay when it's not. And so that time spent is really, really, really useful. And so I sort of entered that mode. Right, we're going to dig this back. We are going to sort this out. This is not going to finish me. Right, let's go. So what are we doing then? Well, the good news is that if you drop a corpse marker from your totem and your low river, then Despa's got a free soulstone that he can farm up. In the early game, I was well aware that my opponent was worried about Desper and was likely to try and target him down. So I didn't want to go anywhere near him with Desper because I thought he would commit very, very heavily to killing him, and I didn't want that to happen because I was aware that Desper wasn't in fact going to be my killing model. It was going to be one of my scoring models, and that now the way to win the game was to score. So it's like, right, Desper's going to go early, he's going to concentrate, he's going to chuck down a scheme marker that someone else will later 4 wins punch into position, and he's going to leap over to a corpse marker, eat that for a soul stone. And what I should have done and realised just now after I said it was that I should have put myself between the 2 corpse markers, so the following turn when he activated he would draw a card as well. But I didn't. There you go, mistakes were made. Not been playing McCabe recently, so not sort of got into the habit of positioning near corpse markers. Anyway, so took a defensive approach with Desper, then spread out to the sides with everything else. So Fermented's running over to the different ballots, another Fermented running into the middle to try and engage Melissa and Hoffman and make their lives a bit miserable, slow them down. And my entire aim was to get Sensei Yu, Shenlong, and a Fermented into the middle, and then basically just delay tactics there. So try to control that middle ballot as long as I could, make it difficult for him to vote, make him have to spend a lot of AP and time trying to hurt me, and then heal that up with low river style. Meanwhile, Desper's going to go off and try to kill a Watcher and collapse one flank and vote over there. I've got a Terracotta heading in that direction, which then became, through mold of the other, another Fermented River Monk, and sort of held on to that ballot. I've got another Fermented River Monk over on the other side holding another ballot. I managed to hunt down with I think it was my remaining student managed to sort of 4 wins punch someone that he was trying to send off towards a corner, 4 wins punch him back into the middle, like, nope, you're not getting to come and do efficient voting without any say so from me, and take some scheme markers back with you as well. They can fuck off. Everything I'm doing is trying to score and prevent scoring and waste his time, waste his AP. That just about worked. So he very nearly killed Sensei Yu, and then Shenlong comes in, says bonus to tell Sensei Yu to take a bonus, so he takes Juggernaut, drops a card, heals up. I think he healed up for 4. I can't remember whether I cheated it or not. Then switched to low river style. That gives me an action to take a 2-3-4 heal. So heal. Now Sensei Yu's back on full from hard to kill. And now he's got to spend a lot more time sort of going through all of that again and again and again. Shenlong, meanwhile, of course, has Chi, as does Sensei Yu. So occasionally when a big attack's coming in, you spend a 13 and a Chi and you're on 20. It's very difficult to hit through that unless you've got a red joker. So you're sort of wasting these really big, powerful attacks of the opponent, and then healing up the damage that they do manage to get through. Meanwhile, Desper is doing the Lord's work and manages to come in and steal a stone from Melissa, giving her stun because she was getting irritating and a bit threatening to one of my flanks where I had just a Fermented River Monk, so I wanted to put a stop to that. Then Desper jumps to the back line to basically control the voting ballot at the back. My opponent, sadly for him, got confused, stuffed the ballots with Raid the vaults, and was thinking that the rear ballot was worth 2, whereas the center ones were worth 1. That's not the case, so they're all equally weighted, and so he missed scoring strategy. He also made another error, which was he deadly pursuited his hunter within melee range of one of my Fermenteds. That sort of incidentally just scored me hold up their forces, and that's what I mean about that scheme, which is you very often, so long as you build your crew correctly for it and try not to throw away too many pieces too early, you sort of incidentally score it. You just sort of go, oh, yep, that one's been scored, lovely. So that's such an advantage of that scheme in particular. It does not cost any AP that you don't already kind of want to spend, so long as you build and play in a style that makes sense for it. So I really, really like that. Of course, there are crews and scheme pools and so on where that just doesn't make sense and where it doesn't work, but when it's available to you and you've got the models and crew that can do it, I really like it, really efficient. So that was good, and Protected Territory was relatively easy. You know, I just sort of put a Terracotta warrior in one corner of the map, took over a ballot and dropped a scheme there, and then dropped another one down there, and over on the other side it was just Desper who, after leaping, chucked one down, and so that was Protected Territory. all of that took a long time. It was a very grindy game, and unfortunately, we ended up hitting the round timer limit. We didn't have that much more time remaining, and I think the result would have been the same. In other words, I would still win, but the end result ended up being really heavily in my favor. I can't remember what it was. It was something nuts, like 7-3 or 6-2 or something like that. And it definitely wasn't that kind of game. It should have been a 1-point gap, but just because we didn't get to play turn 5, my opponent wasn't able to score some of the points that I think he otherwise would have done. As I say, I don't think it changed the result, but it changed the margin of the result, and I think that's unfortunate for my opponent because he played a solid game, and it was sad not to see it reflected in the scoreline. So that was round 1. Round 2, I met one of my MWS opponents from the recent Top 32 tournament, so that was Irenka, and he had taken a little break since that tournament, sort of just having a little rest from Malifaux, and so this was, I think, might have been his first 2 games back. Really was a bit rusty, and so he leaned into his comfort pick within Guild of Shenlong1 with Horse Barrel Steward, and so I'm very, very comfortable with that list in the sense that I know what it does, I know what to expect, and so I'm not having to sort of spend my time not only thinking about what the hell does Shenlong do here, but also thinking about, right, what the hell does my opponent's crew do here? Because if I'm trying to do both at the same time, I just don't have time to deal with the strategy. I can deal with the execution of each individual model. I can go, right, I know what this model does, and I know what I want it to do here, and I'm decent at the game, so I can aim to make that model move towards my goals. But in terms of developing a strategy and a matchup approach on the fly against a crew that you don't know, that's always really, really difficult and takes a lot of time. Whereas playing against a crew that you know reasonably well and you know what the matchup approach is, you just need to figure out, right, how do I do it with this crew instead of that crew? That's so much easier, and that sort of that came through. So this time I did play the Four Winds Golem. I know that I've got the Pale Rider, Dashel, and Lone Marshal guns to contend with, and I also know that he's got some backline pieces that are worth scalpeling out. The pool for this one was Cloak and Dagger on standard deployment, this time with Deathbeds, Espionage, Information Overload, Take Prisoner, and Ensnare. So we've got 4 different schemes which all require scheme markers, and then we've got Take Prisoner, which I personally almost never take anymore, ever, because I don't like taking schemes where you're designed to score 1 point. I think if you are doing that, you should have taken a different master where it's capable of scoring 2. So that's only acceptable in cases where, for example, you've decided to solo a master in order to learn it, and your goal isn't to win the tournament, but to learn a master. Okay, well then you've put yourself in a situation that you know is suboptimal, and then making some optimal choices are more acceptable. Take Prisoner, the first point of it is really quite easy to score, or if they don't know that you've got it because the first point hasn't been scored for some reason, then the second point becomes rather easy to score as well. It's quite an easy one to score when it's hidden. So Take Prisoner is a very easy 1 point, very difficult 2 point. Reason that it's very difficult 2 point, and the reason that I don't like it in general, is because there are way too many mechanics in the game that just accidentally fuck you. So if there's hazardous terrain on the table and the model dies from hazardous, even if it purposefully kills itself by using hazardous terrain, so I'm just going to stand on some hazardous, take a bunch of actions, oh look, I've died, well now you don't score Take Prisoner. So if there's any hazardous terrain anywhere near that model on your side of the table, they can just cancel it. Or if they've got a self-bury mechanic like Bête Noire, and they just bury themselves, and then, oh, look, they're on turn 5, they're dead because they're buried. Great, but that's a neutral kill. It doesn't count as them killing themselves. It counts as them being neutrally just dead, and that means you don't score Take Prisoner either. So lots of ways in which you just get incidentally fucked, and I'm sick of that happening, so I've stopped taking that scheme very much at all. So then we're looking at the other ones, and Information Overload. Interestingly, Shenlong1 doesn't, to me, feel like an amazing info overload master so much as Lin and her crew are. So they've got a lot of sort of incidental bonus dropping of scheme markers that just happens, and so information overload just sort of happens. With Shen, you'd have to really make an effort to spend a lot of AP just interacting to drop the number of scheme markers. What he's much more capable and good at doing is moving scheme markers around with Four Winds Punch, both enemy and friendly. So I find that the positional scheme marker schemes are much better for Shen than the sheer quantity ones. Also, with information overload, you've always got to be really careful of who's got the initiative and therefore who scores what first, and therefore remove schemes from the table to score something, and then all of a sudden your opponent gets to score info overload after. That's a weird one. Not a big fan of it. Not keen on how it works, but you've got to be aware of it. So I decided to take deathbeds because you can, with Shen, sort of bonus one of your totems to then 4 winds punch yourself. You then sort of take the scheme marker with you to wherever it needs to be. Usually that's onto a strategy marker, and then you've got that combination of strategy plus scheme, which you know are going to be available somewhere on the table, and then you just need Shenlong to kill a model near there, which is usually achievable because of his just incredibly efficient card. His card's ludicrous. Access to 4 focused attacks plus 2 unfocused attacks in a perfect world. Almost never happens, but the fact that it's available and that those can be largely irreducible depending on the number of chi that you started with. It's and then stat 8 because of chi, and then getting chi back on the attack. There's a lot of very, very, very brutal stuff you can do with Shen. And then there's a lot of versatile mobile scoring stuff you can do with Shen, and that's why I think he's probably one of the top tier masters in the game. Probably. Deathbeds, therefore, was a good choice and was in fact scored. And the other possibility is Ensnare. Again, because of 4 winds punch and the fact that you can move multiple markers with you and then place them within 3 inches, which is a big range, really, sort of markers within 3, then the model gets pushed 6, and then you can place the markers again within 3. That's a hell of a range to be able to drop a couple of scheme markers and then move them exactly where you want them to be to score. I find Ensnare very, very good and easy for Shen to score, and 4 winds punching stuff around is something you want to do anyway, and anything that scores for something that you want to do anyway is very, very good. So Ensnare and deathbeds it was for me. We go into the game, and I had a forest in my deployment, and my opponent had a big fence in his deployment. Weirdly, he'd chosen it, but it was just, I think, through sort of sheer laziness and the fact that he was sat on that table side in the first place. So I had a good place to hide my low rivers and students and that sort of thing, and also my 4 winds golem. So I wanted to sort of keep the 4 winds golem hidden behind the forest, let him just provide his 3-inch anti-shooting aura, get the turn going, and then pop him out and try and snipe off or damage or threaten some backline stuff. The lawyer, dispatcher, steward, I suppose, to an extent, but you never really want to kill that with the 4 winds. There was some hazardous terrain in the back of his deployment, so I was keen to sort of see if I could wind blast something into there, or up we go, and then chuck it in there and then get the collision trigger, so a lot of ping damage possibilities. Again, I had a couple of fermented river monks. I didn't have the full 3. I had 2 of them, and the reason was that I wanted them to go and annoy the horses, be AP inefficient to kill them, and try to sit on top of some cloak and dagger markers while I controlled the other ones. That isn't quite how that worked out. He decided to unload his early shooting into them instead. He managed to get a damage through and kill one of them. I think one of them early, yeah. But I was, again, usually if people put time, effort, and damage and cards into killing fermenteds rather than my Charm Warder ready to kill his summon models, or my 4 winds golem ready to protect me against some of the shooting on the stuff I care about, or scalpel his back stuff, I'm usually okay with it. As a result of that, he ended up in the end of turn 1, he moved Ashel too far forwards, and I think that was to try and get a sort of a cheap free shot on a terracotta that I was just nudging up one side. And you could tell, sometimes you see that model, you see that one model off to the side that's like, oh, I'm not very threatening. Yeah, it definitely is. You know that's going to be the model that later on scores 2 VP, 1 for a strat, 1 for a scheme, just because you've ignored it. So I understood his desire to go in and get some pings on it early with the Dashel gun. The result of that, sadly, was that he moved out of the protected range of the dispatcher, and so the 4 winds golem dived in, took the chance, and immediately killed it with a severe wind blast, with the collision trigger inbuilt as well, just in case. So with the dispatcher sniped out of the list, unfortunately after he'd managed to summon his first executioner, but with the dispatcher gone, it meant for the rest of the game his card draw was much, much more limited, and essentially the Dashel 1 horse list is very, very much dependent on dealing a lot of damage early doors. So it needs to get those horse go boom, lone marshal, run and gun, snipe, crit, boom. Models need to be dying because he doesn't have a lot of AP in the list, and he needs to try and score his schemes. I think he had espionage and ensnare. I think that's really ambitious. I think he probably should have had deathbeds as well, maybe. Because trying to do a bunch of AP interacts, I guess his idea was that Dashel1's going to be summoning mountain guards and that they're going to be running down the sides and just dropping schemes for free. Nice idea, but the way that the game went, that just never happened, and he didn't have the cards. He couldn't push the damage through. He managed to put Sensei Yu very low twice, including putting him to hard to kill once, but then Shenlong comes in with low river style and the bonus to bonus for Juggernaut to heal and just put Yu back up to full. And it was a very similar story to the first game, which is that it took him so long to deal with my Shen, Yu, and Fermenteds that my other models were able to take control. So the Four Winds Golem killed off the Dispatcher. Next turn, he killed off the Lawyer, or put him on one box, and then I managed to snipe it off with the Charm Warder bonus from downtown. And weirdly, my opponent only had 2 cards left in his discard, so I could work out what they were and then declare that suit and just sort of automatically kill the Lawyer. It cost me a lot of clock, but got the job done. So a lot of that sort of wasting his time and using Four Winds Punch to do exactly what I wanted. So Four Winds Punch his Executioner towards a strategy marker, then use my Charm Warder's Exorcism trigger to kill it, having already placed a scheme marker nearby. So Deathbeds was scored, Ensnare was scored. Did I take Ensnare? Yeah, I did. Ensnare was scored with another Four Winds Punch. No, it wasn't with a Four Winds Punch. I actually spent a Shenlong activation to do that one. So he'd save Dashel right till the end. I'd save Shenlong right till the end, and I decided a VP's a VP. So I did Interact, Walk, Interact. And then one of those was with my bonus, and then I Four Winds Punched Yu over to get ready to steal an Intel token. So at that point, Irenka sort of realized the writing was on the wall. He didn't have the AP left. He hadn't killed enough. I'd taken control of too much of the board. He wasn't going to be able to get his espionage or ensnare off very easily, and his rider had managed to get 1 or 2 fairly decent booms off, but I have a lot of healing in the crew and it wasn't enough. So he tapped out and it ended up being, I think, a 7-2 in my favor. So now I'm sitting at 2-0 going into round 3. A little bit unexpected. I was hoping to do well, but I wasn't expecting to do well. And so now we go into the undefeated bracket. Weirdly, normally in a round of 16 you end up with sort of 2 undefeated players at the end, but in this case one of the games was a draw. So Nikita, I think, and Zabek ended up drawing their game, so we now had only 2 undefeated players. That was myself and Celery. So Celery bringing Arcanists as usual, moving into round 3. Round 3 was Corner Plant Explosives with Power Ritual, In Your Face, Outflank, Hold Up Their Forces, and Ensnare. So there you can see sort of 2 of the comfort picks that I wanted to try and score with this tournament, which is Hold Up Their Forces and Ensnare. So I'm thinking immediately, okay, we'll go with the Fermented River Monks again and try and score Hold Up. And then we've got Ensnare, Four Winds Punch, and a bunch of models that are significant so that we can drop some scheme markers. We should be good. Unfortunately, Celery declared Sandeep. So we talked about how the Dashel1 Horse Barrel Steward is a list that I'm very familiar with, and so that saved me a lot of time and mental energy dealing with an approach. I just needed to execute it. Sandeep 2 is the very, very opposite. So I have heard from the German community specifically about the power of Sandeep, and so I knew that he was a serious threat, but I've never played against Sandeep, and I think I've seen 1 game on Vassal on YouTube or something like that of Sandeep, and it was played quite differently to the way that it was played in our game, so it didn't really help me, and I didn't have a clue. So I sort of resigned myself early doors to, right, this is now going to be a learning game. So I'm learning Shenlong, and now I'm also learning Sandeep. So I'll get to see what he does. So I don't need to worry too much about trying to, again, counterpick or tech too heavily. We just need to build a solid list that has a plan. We'll try and execute that plan the best we can, and then we'll see what Sandeep can do, and we'll just rely on sort of standard mechanical Malifaux play and see how we get on. So during the opening turn on corner, you've sort of got with Shen, you've got free reign to do as much chi gathering as you like, but the problem is that if you do too much of it, you really don't make a lot of progress towards the midline, and then it's a bit harder and more predictable which model you're going to be dropping bombs with. So I did my usual drunk monks get drunk. Other models try and spread out a little bit because his Four Winds Golem was moving more and more towards me. I don't really know how he was doing that. I think it's like he's using the demise of... he gets to use the demise when he concentrates, and when he concentrates, he gets to do a fuckload of other things. So he gets to do ridiculously efficient stuff on his side as well, especially in terms of all the demises popping off all the time and concentrate being everywhere, and that transferring chi to his Four Winds Golem as well. So he's doing that, and I'm thinking, this isn't great. So the only tech piece that I put in was a Charm Warder, because when I was flicking through his models, almost all of them had some demise or other, so I thought Charm Warder might be nice, and Jinx and hand Drain is never bad, so we'll pop in a Charm Warder. But other than that, usual Terracottas, Sensei Yu, Drunk Monks, and a Low River, and away we go. So off we go into the middle, and he took a pot shot at one of my Terracottas. So I think he did similar to what Irenka tried to do in the previous round, take some pot shots at the Terracottas early, get some collision trigger going on, so you go 1-1, which is really, really efficient against Terracottas, and a lot of people struggle with that, but not the Four Winds Golem necessarily, though. You can say, right, a 10-stone model with a 2-stone upgrade is now dealing a bit of damage to a 4-stone model. Is that a good use of your early turn? Don't know. It didn't pressure me very much. The only thing it forced me to do was stop sending that Terracotta towards a corner, which is where he was heading, and to instead bring him behind a forest and hide. So he spent the rest of the game just drawing me cards rather than doing anything significant. But is that worth a 12-stone model's turn? I don't know. My Fermenteds went forwards, and my idea was that... if I can get involved and just get into a real scrum, then I think Sandeep's ability to sit miles back and just pump Pyre Marker shockwaves at me comfortably goes away. So I thought, right, let's start making progress. So the first turn, I tried to stay out of his ridiculous threat ranges and just spend the opportunity to build up my chi and poison and so on. And then the second turn was all about making progress as quickly as I could over the midline and into his crew. That's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to punt Shenlong in there. I wanted to punt Fermenteds in there. Unfortunately, my Fermenteds did end up taking so many hits and damage from, like, right now he gets to make an attack and now there's a coordinated attack, and I don't really understand anything of what he was doing. I don't know his cards. I didn't have time to read them. And so I just, took his word for it and tried to do the best I could with the stats and the chi available. But yeah, Fermenteds started dropping a little bit faster than I would have liked. That meant that we never really got the hold of their forces that we wanted. Ensnare, I managed to pull off a nice ensnare, so I set that one up with a couple of models sort of just dropping out scheme markers here and there, and then used a student to punt Shenlong towards the Four Winds Golem late in the turn, took the scheme markers with, and he didn't have anything left to deny it. Meanwhile, unfortunately, he takes advantage of Durdling as well, very, very well, by turning his 3 Gamins into Wind Gamins, so he basically just gets to play 6 Soul Stones up. And they are essentially very, very efficient little leapers. He leaps off into the corners to plant his bombs safely, and I assumed to score out flank, which I guess now, looking back at the game, was his plan. Sort of make it look like I'm going for that he's going for outflank. I overcommit to stopping that, and then he scores whatever he's going for, which I think was Ensnare and Power Ritual. So he wasn't going for the outflank, he was going for the Power Ritual. I think that's probably correct, because I think Power Ritual, the first point is incredibly easy to score, and then the second point is as difficult as outflank, I would say. Especially if you have 3 mobile little leapers for 4 stones that are actually 6 stone models. So yeah, I think his game plan was decent. And at one stage, I managed to run Shenlong in and really start wailing on Sandeep himself. So I managed to get in there with some Four Winds Punch and then charge and get a couple of focused attacks off, get a couple of severes in there. So he had to spend stones on trying to... so first of all, he let the severe go through and then stone the damage. Next time, I think he stoned and then at a moderate anyway and then stoned that damage. So we've now, we were really chipping away at his stones. But I hadn't sort of realised that he had 2 Soulstone Cache models, both Banasuva and Four Winds Golem, and so his ability, in combination with my list that had a lot of cheap models in there that are going to die at some stage, he was able to bring those stones back. He also has Heal 4 twice in his list, once on Sandeep and once on the clown with the fucking 2-2, I don't know what it's called. So yeah, he managed to heal up Sandeep, but I managed to stun him, deal serious damage to him. He had to sort of move Sandeep back. So I felt like even though it didn't kill, it put significant pressure on Sandeep, and it felt like he had to spend his time moving back, staying secure, trying to put other stuff in my way, and I was more than happy to kill that other stuff. So the Charm Warder came in, put injured on Banasuva twice, and then from there it was sort of a case of, when you've got a double injured model, it's really, really inefficient to keep that model alive. So he chose to try and keep her alive, or him, for a long time, but eventually went down after costing me a lot of AP and him a lot of stones. We got through. Bomb situation, I managed to get one Fermented River Monk into a corner to drop a bomb and then hold it. That was good. That really sort of secured my early scoring. I managed to get you into the middle to drop a bomb, but I didn't realize he had a Don't Mind Me model. So in my mind, I had a safe bomb there with you standing base to base on top of it. A laugh off model on top of a bomb is usually pretty good. But I didn't. As I said, I didn't have time to check his cards. I didn't know what he had. He had a Don't Mind Me model right there, so he was able to remove it. Fair enough. I'm not going to kick myself for that. I didn't know he had it. Okay. And then meanwhile, he had some leapers off to the side. I decided to send Shenlong off to kill one of them, try and pick up his bomb, and then plant my own bomb, charge off a cliff to get the distance to get down and drop another bomb with my bonus. So Shenlong was really, really active this game himself and doing a lot of work. Meanwhile, my opponent was sort of running around me with Gamin and putting a lot of pressure on with his Four Winds Golem. And in the end, essentially, I had a lot of models and not a lot of matchup knowledge, and I clocked out. So we ended up with, I hadn't managed to hold up their forces. I didn't have time to do it. I had scored the first point of ensnare, but obviously once I've clocked out, I'm never scoring the second part. And because I've clocked out, I can't move or use any of my movement tricks to prevent him scoring his ensnare or his power ritual, despite trying. So I ended up losing by 1 point. I think the end score was 5-4, something like that. We were only about 2 minutes away from the round timer for the game, but my opponent had much more time on clock, so it was quite right that he got to sort of finish off and score all his stuff, and that I didn't because I clocked out. That's fine. But it was nice to know that even into a list that's considered pretty meta, and even for my first tournament with Shenlong, that even on the top table, I was able to get a game to where I'm pretty confident, had I had time, I would have won by 1 or 2, probably 1 point. If my opponent had pulled off some really clever stuff, then maybe we draw, I don't know. But so to get to that stage and to know that it's like, right, okay, all I need to do is get more reps, get a bit cleaner, understand my own crew a bit better, and we can end up with a really, really solid situation where we can take down tournaments with some pretty strong opponents. So that was really, really great. I was happy with that. Ended up with the 2 guys that drew, ended up winning their subsequent games. So they went 2-0-1, 2 wins and a draw. I ended up with 2 wins and a loss. So I dropped down to 4th place, I think, in the tournament, and that's where I ended up. Really happy with that for a first event with Shenlong, and it sets me up nicely to go into the next Vassal event, which will be the first qualifying one that I'm able to play in. With Shenlong sort of feeling much more like he's in my repertoire, so I can bring him out if I want to, and I might even play him solo again. I don't know, I haven't decided, but it's an option. So that was the Krakow It's a Kind of Magic tournament from the 10th of February in 24. roundup and also my sort of initial thoughts on Shenlong as they came up. I'm sure I'll do more on this as we go forwards, but I think this video is more than long enough for that. So enjoy. I hope you're all well, and I look forward to seeing some of you in Přerov for the next tournament, which is in the Czech Republic in March. And then I believe now I've been told that there is a 2-day event coming up in Krakow in April. So I'm hoping to sort of organise some accommodation for that evening and then make it over there for that as well. Nothing more from me. I hope you're all well. Take care.